Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Dodson, and today I will be presenting upon the subject of adaptive or disability sports and the necessity for improved accessibility and accommodations worldwide for those who possess a disability. Um, it is approximated by the World Health Organization that about 15% of the world's population suffers from what is considered a disability. Um, this would mean that nearly 1 billion people uh, live their day to day life with difficulties, either minor or major, whether that is something such as attention deficit disorder or something much more serious, such as paraplegia. Um, as I was forming my own questions and opinions regarding this subject, my initial inclination was to determine the differences from country to country or state to state in the resources provided for those with disabilities to participate in sport, and how that may differ based upon the economic health or financial stability of the area, as well as the culture that is located in the area's attitudes towards people with disability. While I quickly realized that it is certainly difficult to find the numbers and the information that I was really hoping to find regarding that main subject matter, my focus soon began to shift upon the overall idea of viewing sport and viewing disability within the social context or a social framework, and the importance of allowing equal access to sports and recreation, not simply because of the medical benefits that activity provides, but more so for the social impact and the economic impact that comes from the benefits of participating in something such as a sport. As I delved more into this subject, I quickly realized that regardless of what information I were to find, statistically, proving one idea or the other, whether that is a richer country is able to offer more resources and opportunities, or vice versa, depending upon the differences in culture as well. The main idea that I came across through reading various scholarly articles and journals is that it's already essentially concluded that there is not nearly enough in regards to resources offered for people with disabilities. This is especially true in the United States, and that should be a shock coming as the United States is one of the world leaders in GDP, as well as it being the first globally interconnected nation that to pass legislation in the early 1990s regarding individuals with disabilities and offering equal protections under the federal government. While there, of course, are many organizations that people with particular disabilities may search and find throughout the states and throughout other countries that would offer some sort of normalcy in regards to sports and recreation, those organizations are normally community founded, community funded, and do not typically seem to extend beyond their own local borders. So for an individual in a rural area very interested in soccer or basketball, but has been confined to a wheelchair since they were born, they may not find the same access to these opportunities to participate in sport like their other peers, as someone in maybe a more metropolitan area such as New York. Ultimately, the question I began to develop, beyond the idea that possibly culture, possibly finance, provides some sort of resemblance of who is being provided for by their own society or their own communities. The ultimate question I founded myself delving upon was not how is it different, but how is it the same? It seems to be globally that people with disabilities do not receive the proper recognition that they deserve, and most certainly do not receive the appropriate resources. Therefore, my question became, how can we help this issue? How can we solve this? While there is never an easy answer to something as large as this, I found and settled upon an idea or an action plan that I felt would definitely suit this overall subject. Before I go further into this plan, I would like to offer some details regarding why I feel this plan is appropriate and how I would support it when it comes to going through the application process of creating this organization or program, and how I would carry it out and what it would offer. So ultimately, what I found through various articles is that, no shock to me and perhaps the audience, in the periods between 1987 and 1995, it was reported that the standard of living for those who lived with disabilities were typically much lower than those who were not. This came from an article titled "Empowerment Through the Sport Context, a Model to Guide Research." And this was written and published by Anne Pensgaard and Merit Sorensen of the Norwegian University of Sport and Physical Education. You may find this, it was published in 2002 underneath the overall journal known as Adapted Physical Activity Quarterly. Within my other research, I found that sport typically would improve the standard of living for those who lived with disability. In two articles, the first one I'll touch upon, Negotiating Identities Through Disability Sport, authored and published by Chin-Ju Huang and Ian Britton in 2006 under the Sociology of Sport journal. It found that sport and the ability to use your body, exert force, resolve your own power from within into physical action was very important in developing personal identity politics and building some sort of idea as to who you are. For those who are unable to find this type of resource in their own life, this could only leave a void to be filled, and that void, a lot of times, and not just in regards to sport, but in regards to many normal day-to-day activities, individuals who live with disabilities will often have to fill that void with sadness, depression, and loathing for a different type of lifestyle. In a 2017 article titled "How Does Playing Adaptive Sport Affect Quality of Life of People with Mobility Limitations?" Found in the Health and Quality of Life Outcomes Journal, authored by many different researchers. It was found that participation in adaptive sports was identified as having positive effects on self-esteem, self-efficacy. It provided a sense of belonging for those who were participants, and it also provided a positive effect by allowing these individuals to participate in meaningful activities, and also improve society's attitudes towards people with mobility limitations and their physical well-being. In this study, about 30 individuals were surveyed who live with a paraplegic condition and also participate in adaptive sports, many of which participating at the international and Olympic level. It was found when comparing these people to those who do not live with a disability, the overall testing up to a score of 30 in regards to their outlook on life and the measure at which they provide regarding how satisfactory their life is. Those with disabilities who participate in sport tested nearly equivalent to those who live day-to-day life without a disability. Those who tested and were surveyed who live with a disability and participate in the sport tested with a score of 21.9 out of 30 and a standard deviation of 3.3, while those without disabilities tested at about 22.3 out of 30 with a standard deviation of 2.9. They also looked at individuals with disabilities who do not play sports, and the overall score was significantly lower. Now, given some sort of background, I will jump right into what I would propose as a plan of action. So, what I found to be the most beneficial and potentially more influential plan of action was to propose the creation of an intergovernmental agency, program, or initiative under the guise of the World Sports Alliance. Now, I titled this initiative as the Initiative for Improved Disability Sport Access. And now when I say under the guise of the World Sports Alliance, I'll explain that a little further. The World Sport Alliance is a organization created by various countries within the United Nations, separate of the UN, but in partnership with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And its goal is to provide sport and recreation to countries that may need further social or economic development. Both the World Sport Alliance and the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs recognize sports and recreation as a pivotal tool in creating a sense of unity, trust, respect, and it is also viewed as a mechanism for providing many of the core values that move many societies in a positive direction. Because of this, the United Nations sponsors the World Sport Alliance in projects across the globe in developing, creating and maintaining sport programs, sport facilities, or projects that, for example, within the past couple of years, the World Sport Alliance had built an initiative where it would convert previous mines into soccer fields in Africa and Latin America. So in partnership with both the World Sport Alliance and the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, I proposed the initiative to essentially work underneath the World Sport Alliance's overall mission of providing sports and recreation as a tool for underprivileged areas, but for those who suffer disability. I found it fitting that, considering nearly 15% of the world's population can be considered disabled, that is definitely a considerable amount of people that are underrepresented and deserve to be represented when the World Sports Alliance or the United Nations develop and create these programs. So essentially, before this can become an actual initiative, I would need to go online and submit a proposal using the United Nations Democracy Fund. Once a proposal is submitted, I would hear back upon review, and as long as the evidence supports a need and supports a logical reasoning for why this initiative should be adopted, then it will be adopted for review, and beyond review would be implemented. Now, assuming that this is already done and this has been approved and is now being implemented, the three core tenets of which this overall initiative would focus upon are the creation of recreation facilities that offer accommodations for men and women who are disabled, as well as offering free consultation and fundraising for local disability-friendly recreation organizations. And it would also promote the acceptance and further recognition of disability sport, as well as striving for increased interest beyond amateurism. Why did I say amateurism there? The main mission, or the main tenet of the World Sports Alliance, providing sport as a tool for improved livelihoods of those in underprivileged nations and areas, is that they are doing so in offering amateur sports. This is a key definition in regards to the fact that while there are professional sports leagues across the globe, they only cater to a specific audience of employees or participants, and those are individuals with extremely high athletic abilities, and they are being paid for their services of entertainment and their sport accolades. Amateur sport is something that all people can participate in. However, as founded through much of our research within the class this semester, people with disabilities are often underrepresented and are unable to participate in amateur sports. This overall plan is meant to improve the livelihoods of or improve the lives of these people with disabilities as a means to an end of furthering an agenda of acceptance and respect and recognition for those with disabilities, but also for improving those people with disabilities' lives, and as a result, improving the lives around them and improving the society as a whole at which they participate in. while more commonly disability sport is viewed in a medical model, finding sport as a resource for providing health benefits and rehabilitation, or a method of um, uh, physical improvement upon that person's disability, this whole entire project is being viewed more so in a sociological method, or a society view, in which it is important for not just the able-bodied, but also the people who have disabilities that restrict their everyday actions, to feel as if they are participating equally within a society. And in this case, this extends into the sports and recreation world. Now, while this is, of course, all theoretical and is most likely not actually being implemented in the real world, this is definitely something that, through creating this project and researching that, I've been inspired personally, and I've found a plethora of information to support a need for such an initiative, that, quite honestly, I am going to create an application using the United Nations Democracy Fund and see where it leads, because the main reason why this is something that should be supported is that people with disabilities are people. They do not need to be defined by their disability, and they certainly should not have their life dictated and restricted, as much as it is, by an ailment or by a characteristic of who they are, that is seen as abnormal, or seen as an obstacle to doing many of the things that me and my classmates are capable of doing of our free will. I know through the what, how, why outlines in the past couple of days and the past 2 weeks, there was a question as to why is this important, or why should this happen, and overall it's more of a question of humanity and equal access to the same privileges that I'm provided every day. And hopefully with initiatives such as this, and whatever else may come along in the near future, individuals with disabilities may not wake up dreading life as much, and may find some sort of resemblance of what would be considered normal to many, and find some sort of sport to fill that void that's often left by the challenges of dealing with their own disability. Thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed this semester. I hope you liked my project. Thank you, Dr. Pate.